Hey YouTube, it's Rob, and today I wanted to do a video explaining how I learn languages, and I would like also to see how other people with this hobby learn languages, what method works best for them, and I want to share which method works best for me. When a lot of people try to start learning a language, they most often go and pick up a book on the language. And in this book, there will be written drills, there will be long, extensive vocabulary lists, grammar tables, grammar drills, all that stuff. But there won't be really any sections of audio to help learn the language. And a lot of people do this. They buy this type of book and they jump right into the language, and then they give up after a few weeks. I don't really agree with this method. I think that this method could be helpful if you were going to do, say, extensive textual translations in the language. But as far as developing fluency or being able to speak or understand and listen to the language, I don't think this method works. Yes, there's definitely a time for it. You need to review grammar, you need to study grammar, you need to build a vocabulary, but I think there's a time and a place to do so when studying a language, and I feel that that's not the best way to start out learning a language. The way that I start learning a language is I just listen. I try to go from a very natural approach. For example, when we were born, we couldn't speak, we couldn't write, we couldn't read, we had no idea what the language meant. But we grew up listening to that language. We heard our parents speak it, we heard the people around us speaking it, we heard it on the radio, we heard it on the TV. And for the first year of our lives, we just acquired all of these sounds, and then only later did we learn how to speak the language by effectively training our mouth and our voice to recreate those sounds that we heard. And we might still not have even understood what they meant when we were a year or two old and learning how to talk. But we finally did learn what the words meant. We learned what those sounds represent. But we still didn't know how to read. We didn't understand any grammar. We grew up listening to the language and reproducing those sounds and learning how to speak it before we even began studying how to read and write and the grammar until we started school when we were 5 or 6 years old. And only then did we begin to study the grammar and how to properly speak and write the language. So this is the method that I try to approach a new language with. For example, I'm getting ready to start studying French in great detail. I was exposed to French primarily 2 summers ago. I have family in upstate New York near Albany, and every summer we try to make a side trip off of that trip to go see somewhere else. For example, one year we went to Boston and Cape Cod for a couple of days. One year we went to Niagara Falls. One year we went to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Just different things. Well, in the summer of 2008, we took a trip to Montreal and Quebec City. And I knew that everybody up there spoke French, but I didn't know any French at the time. And being up there was a new cultural experience for me. I had never been somewhere other than walking across the border into Juarez, Mexico when I was 10 years old, where people spoke a different language. And I have never really given any thought to studying French, but I do intend to move to Canada at some point in the not too distant future. And definitely a working knowledge of French would be highly beneficial. But being up there and seeing the language and seeing signs in the language and hearing people speak that language made me really want to learn that language. So what I'm doing to start learning that language is I'm just listening to it. I'm streaming French radio stations off the internet. I'm listening to audiobooks that are written in French. Not even looking at the text on the page, just listening to it. Listening to audio drills, listening to the pronunciation, just trying to get the sounds of the language down. And once I do that, I'll try to reproduce those sounds. Professor Arguelles has a very effective method known as the shadowing technique, where you listen to something on headphones in the target language that you're trying to learn, and then you try to reproduce what's being said as you hear it. Now, when you first try this out, you're going to sound like a baby talking. That's the closest analogy that I can think of. Because you can't hear all of the sounds, you don't know how to reproduce those sounds yet. But over time, your mouth will be trained to create those sounds. And this is how I think you can learn to speak a language without having the foreign accent with that language. So I plan on doing this. I do about 20 or 30 minutes every day just listening and trying to reproduce those sounds. And once I can start to reproduce those sounds fairly accurately, only then will I start to build up a vocabulary and try to read and begin to study the grammar of the language. And the whole time I'm going to try to speak with people in French. I met a friend from Montreal about a week ago. I haven't really spoken to him much, but hopefully we can start to communicate in French, because that would be extremely helpful. So that's my method for studying languages, and I would really appreciate it if anybody who watches this and who is interested in this sort of thing would make a video response explaining how they study languages. I know that a lot of you have already done so. So if you already have a video on your channel explaining how you study languages, what your method is, then you don't need to make a reply video to this. But for those of you that don't, I would really appreciate if you would share your methods and maybe compare them. Maybe there's something that I could be doing better, because this is all new to me. I've just very recently gotten very interested in studying languages. So if you can do that, that would be great. Thanks for watching. Bye.